Hello, BookTube. Who's up for a little Thursday TBR torture? I have 6 books I want to show you here. They're all for the autumn, so you can put them on a wish list and just forget about it and wait until they come out, and we'll see which one of them intrigue you. I haven't read any of these, and well, the first one I want to show you is the only one that's not the autumn. The first one is a paperback reprint of a hardcover that came out last year. And the paperback reprint, I wanted to show it to you because it is a very rare example of a paperback reprint cover design that is a total success. An American cover design that's a total success. The hardcover of this book had a fairly eye-catching cover, but a little bit on the cliche side. But the paperback, this is Grady Hendrix. He of Paperbacks from Hell fame, and this is his novel, We Sold Our Souls. Only look at what the job they did with the paperback cover. This comes out, I think, in mid-June, and it has been fashioned after a Rolling Stone cover, complete with subheadlines and issue number 666. And this is, let me read you about this. Only a girl with a guitar can save us all. Every morning, Chris Pulaski wakes up in hell. In the 1990s, she was lead guitarist for Dirt Work, a heavy metal band on the brink of breakout success, until lead singer Terry Hunt embarked on a solo career and rocketed to stardom, leaving his bandmates to rot in obscurity. Now Chris works as a night manager at a Best Western. She's tired, broke, and unhappy. Then one day everything changes. A shocking act of violence turns her life upside down, and she begins to suspect that Terry sabotaged more than just the band. She hits the road, hoping to reunite Dirt Work and confront the man who ruined her life. Her journey will take her from the Pennsylvania Rust Belt to a celebrity rehab center to a satanic music festival. The furious power ballad about never giving up, We Sold Our Souls, is an epic journey into the heart of conspiracy-crazed, pill-popping, paranoid country that seems to have lost its very soul. And I was totally impressed when I saw this. Of course, I didn't recognize it because in American book publishing, I just expect that no matter how bad the hardcover design is, the paperback will faithfully reproduce it, and this does not. So that's the first one. That comes out in paperback later this year, and then all the rest of these are the autumn. And we'll start with schmaltzy item, something that's designed to pull at your heartstrings, and I'm sure that it will succeed. Let me get the pub sheet out here so that I can read it to you. This will have, of course, a very circumspect reading audience, but that reading audience will buy copies. This comes out in October. It's by Liz Stavronidis and John Schlim, and it's Extraordinary Dogs. And it is all about rescue and service dogs. A heartwarming collection that recounts the stories of more than 50 working dogs, along with the police officers, firefighters, veterans, and other trained volunteer handlers who serve side by side with them. And you get famous stories here. Washington Dulles International Airport Department of Homeland Security has TSA dogs whose sole job it is to keep the flying public safe from explosives and other dangers, and all sorts of other stories in here. It's not the sort of thing that dog lovers will find new. They'll have seen these stories before. These stories are, and stories like them, are traded all the time on places like Twitter and Facebook. But nevertheless, the book in October will be fairly heartwarming. It turns on the fact that that dogs are natural candidates for this sort of thing, for 2 reasons. One is that they have super senses. Humans just rely on that. It's a normal fact of life that we don't even really think about. I've lost count of how many times I have walked my dogs, or my one dog now, up to someone, and my dogs are typically friendly. In the last 40 years, there have been a couple of exceptions where I had very nervous or high-strung dogs who weren't particularly friendly. They weren't unfriendly, but they weren't outgoing. But most of my dogs end up reflecting my own personality. Most of my dogs are extremely outgoing, except beagles. but even beagles can be friendly. They're not going to rush right out and make best friends with you. But I've lost count of how many times that an outgoing dog of mine would run up to someone in order to greet them, and the human would say, "Oh, they must smell my dog." And you hear that all the time, and you don't even think anymore that what humans routinely do is just automatically attribute to dogs senses far beyond their own. Supernatural senses. So, the human isn't saying, yeah, I really smell like my dog. No, they can't perceive it, and they know they can't. That's one reason, and the other reason, that is natural, and the other reason is not natural. The other reason is the product of 17,000 years of selective breeding, which is that dogs are immensely empathetic to humans. They are the ally species of humans. The original dogs figured it out. They figured out, if I overcome my resistance and ally myself with this species, it will be a net benefit for me, and it's turned out to be a net benefit for the species, of course, as well. So, but those are the two reasons that why you have this instead of, for instance, service zebras or whatever. This is going to be a kind of a touching book. It'll be full of full color photos. When I get the finished copy, I'll show you the photos. Then this next one, this next one is fascinating. It comes out from Amazon on the 1st of October. And it's going to be familiar to a lot of you, whether you know the details of the story or not. I want to read you the details. This is by Jan Stocklasa. It's been translated by Tara Chase. It came out last year in, I think, the original Swedish. Do we say? Yes, in the original Swedish. This is The Man Who Played with Fire. Stieg Larsson. Stieg Larsson's Lost Files and the Hunt for an Assassin. It's a nonfiction work about the author of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. On February 28th, 1986, Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme was shot dead on the streets of Stockholm, and the crime remains unsolved. Before authoring his international best-selling Millennium Trilogy, Stieg Larsson began his own intense investigation into the assassination. He continued his search for the murderer for years until his own death in 2004. In 2014, the journalist and documentary filmmaker Jan Stocklasa gained access to Larsson's files through Larsson's former employer, the anti-fascist magazine Expo, and discovered his private investigation into the Olof Palme homicide case in 20 cardboard boxes. The Man Who Played with Fire, the author reveals new facts about the case and reveals the hitherto unknown research of the best-selling author in a fascinating true crime story. So he hauls out those boxes and goes over the dead man's notes, finds out the case that he was building, and builds a case of his own. For the first time in many years, the police in Sweden have taken active measures to investigate a new suspect in the murder case and are pursuing leads based on the research revealed in the author's book. In the years that have passed, the threat from far-right groups that Larsson was obsessed with has only risen, and not just in Sweden, but around the globe. Readers now know Larsson for his fictional version of those far-right villains, but Larsson, in his meticulous research, laid out the clues, and in The Man Who Played with Fire, Stocklasa picks up the trail, and together they break open the long, cold case. This is a perfect example of a claim that I often make on this channel, which is that good nonfiction is infinitely better. I'm sure this is much more interesting and much better done than The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which sold 80 billion copies. I can't wait to read it. I'm wondering, the one thing I'm curious about, I'm curious about the whole thing. I want to know what kind of case Larsson was building. But naturally, when you read this subject, you automatically start to wonder about Larsson's own death, and whether or not the people he was investigating somehow managed to concoct a death for him. It's probably not the case, and probably this author doesn't chase that down. It just is odd when a man in middle age drops down dead. That is odd. You automatically start to wonder about that, even if there's ample reason why, ample medical reason why. So I don't know if that'll be a side benefit, but the main story there is fascinating anyway. Then this next one I think is also this is from early September. This is by Bridget Strawbridge Howard, and it gave me a little wistful smile, of course. Let's see here. It's called Dancing with Bees, A Journey Back to Nature, and it's about a woman who writes a memoir about bees. And it was a little wistful for me because I once knew a little old lady who had a thing about bees. And I teased her about it relentlessly. And now when I see one of the ways that I teased her about it was Me Sainted Ma. And one of the ways that I teased her about it was to send her a copy of every single new bee book so that she could just display it on her coffee table. And she always got a kick out of that. But this comes out in hardcover. in early September. And let's see here. Humans have been dancing with Earth's 20,000 different bee species for thousands of years. Did you know there were 20,000 different species of bees? For celebrated bee advocate and wildlife gardener Bridget Strawbridge Howard, understanding the dance all around her has become a journey of profound discovery. It is the most fascinating thing in the world to read about the language of bee movement. The incredible complexity of bee language is amazing. I'm sure that it will be a large part of this book. The author was shocked the day she realized that she knew more about the French Revolution than she did about her native bees and birds and wildflowers. The thought stopped her, quite literally, in her tracks. But that day was also the start of a journey, one filled with silver birches and hairy-footed flower bees and skylarks and rose bay willow herb, and the joy that comes from deepening one's relationship with place. Dancing with Bees is the author's charming and eloquent account of a return to noticing things, to reconnecting and rediscovering a natural world that had somehow been lost to her for decades. In it, you will not only learn about bees, but like the author, you will learn from them. And this has original illustrations as well, and I love these sorts of things anyway. I'm a big fan of natural history and case studies like this, and also studies of space. That description meant of little locale, your pond, the path to your work, your patch of forest. Love those sorts of books. Just love them. Let's see here, and then let's see. Then we'll move on to history. This is a very popular historian, someone who's some of his books you will probably have read or at least seen them. And this is a big thing. This is the most ambitious thing he's ever done. The author is Tom Holland, who wrote the book Rubicon. That a lot of people, I know a lot of book clubs love that book. And this one is called Dominion, and it's about the triumph of Christianity. And it comes out at the very end of October. To live in a Western country is to live in a society utterly saturated by Christian concepts. That's how the pub sheet starts. You do not have to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. You can support the separation of church and state. You can live your life practicing another religion or no religion at all. But elements of Christianity are found everywhere in the West, down to the language we use and even the way we understand time. Those of you who are familiar with the online or in-person atheist communities will be familiar with these kind of overreaching claims. We'll just have to see how much, how far under their sway Tom Holland is in the course of the book itself. In this forthcoming book, a renowned historian Tom Holland details one of the most enduring legacies of the ancient world, Christianity. That part is true. Covering over 2,500 years, the book traces the evolution of Christianity and shows how it radically reshaped Western culture. Dominion explores what made the religion so subversive and disruptive, beginning with the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, who, despite suffering a death of a slave, became worshipped as a god. Suddenly, it became more noble to suffer than to inflict suffering. Holland explores the implications of this shocking reversal in Roman culture, how this conviction has reverberated throughout history. Despite the West becoming increasingly doubtful of religion's claims, so many of its instincts remain, for good and ill, thoroughly Christian. It is... Okay. All right, well. It is why we tend to believe that every human life is of equal value and that the workings of the conscience are the surest determinants of good law. Like I said, people familiar with atheist circles will recognize this kind of ideological overreach. Divided into 3 parts, the book moves from antiquity to modernity and ends with contemporary examples of the saturation of Christendom in the Western culture's mindset. The author argues that even concepts such as secularism, liberalism, science, and homosexuality are deeply rooted in Christian seedbed, giving examples ranging from the American Civil Rights Movement to Harvey Weinstein and #MeToo. I don't know anything about Tom Holland personally, but I have a feeling this book is going to intrigue me and also infuriate me, because the description on the book and in the pub sheet makes it a very familiar case that, for instance, Christian apologists always make. I don't know if Tom Holland is one, but what was that business? Holland argues that even concepts such as secularism, liberalism, science, and homosexuality are deeply rooted in the Christian seedbed. In other words, the familiar Christian claim that non-Christians, and especially atheists, are borrowing their worldview from Christianity, and that they need it, that everything they have is based on it, whether they turn their back on it or not. That's kind of infuriating. We'll have to see how far this book traces that. But anyway, I wouldn't miss it. I'm sure that it's going to be piled high in every new bookstore. It comes out in late October. I will get the finished copy, in early October, I would assume, somewhere around there. But by then I will have read it already. I'm going to read this as soon as the summer's over. And then we have the last book. I have a feeling I'm going to argue with this one too. This comes out in September. It's by Sean Carroll. No stranger himself to atheist online argument circles, but also a scientist. And this is his book on a very controversial quantum physics idea. This is Something Deeply Hidden, Quantum Worlds and the Emergence of Space-Time by Sean Carroll. And I don't have a pub sheet for it, but I'll read you the back. Something Deeply Hidden begins with the news that physics is in a crisis. Quantum mechanics underlies all of modern physics, but major gaps in the theory have been ignored since 1927. Science popularizers keep telling us how weird the quantum world is, how contradictory, how impossible it is to understand. Academics discourage students from working on the dead end of quantum foundations. Putting his professional reputation on the line, Sean Carroll says that that crisis can now come to an end. We just have to accept that there is more than one of us in the universe. There are many, many Sean Carrolls, many of every one of us. Some of you will know the many worlds theory of quantum theory. The many worlds theory of quantum behavior says that every time there is a quantum event, a world splits off with everything in it the same, except that in that other world, the quantum event didn't happen. As you read this, you are splitting into multiple copies of yourself thousands of times per second. Step by step, in Carroll's uniquely lucid way, he sets out the major objections to this utterly mind-blowing notion until his case is inescapably established. The holy grail of modern physics is reconciling quantum mechanics with Einstein's general relativity, his theory of curved space-time. Carroll argues that our refusal to face up to the mysteries of quantum mechanics has blinded us, and that space-time and gravity naturally emerge from a deeper reality called the wave function. No book for a popular audience has attempted to make this radical argument. We're on the threshold of a new way of understanding the cosmos. Pretty grand claims. Sean Carroll is a wonderful writer. I wonder if they list his other books. He wrote The Big Picture. He wrote The Particle at the End of the Universe. He wrote From Eternity to Here. All of his books are wonderful. He is a fantastic writer. I don't have any idea what his level of success will be in this particular book. I have heard the many worlds theory purported many different times and many different people. It strikes me as fundamentally absurd. In any kind of theory, in any kind of thought experiment or extrapolation that you do in science, you are supposed to be minimalist, as minimalist as possible. And a theory that posits that every time a quant turns right instead of left, an entire universe is born, is not a minimal theory. It's ridiculously, baroquely top-heavy. I'm no physicist. I know that will shock you. I'm no physicist, but even I can, from a mile away, say, no, no. Whatever the explanation is, it's not that. It's not something so elaborate as that. If the mysteries that still remain of quantum foundation can only be solved by airily theorizing infinite multiplying universes, where one tiny, in fact, the smallest particle that exists changes its orientation and suddenly there's a new Peoria, right down to its sewer system. A theory that can posit that without a single shred of evidence, without anything that even comes close to suggesting that there is a separate Alpha Centauri star system when your car turns left instead of right. A theory that posits that might as well be the Book of Genesis. It might as well be Bronze Age Hebrew mythology. There's no grounding for either one. But maybe Sean Carroll will prove me wrong. I don't know. The book, the Dust Jacket copy, makes very strong claims about the case that he makes. So we shall see. Anyway, that is your Thursday TBR torture. Sort of all over the map here of books that you can either put on your list. Maybe they interest you. They'll be coming out in the fall. We'll be talking about them then, except for one. Grady Hendrix's paperback release of We Sold Our Souls is coming out this month. But we have Something Deeply Hidden. How many of you are there? Then we have Dominion by Tom Holland. Tom Holland he's a sure bet for the History Book Club, for history reading groups, for the new release table of your bookstore. And this is his big book about the rise of Christianity, a well-traveled ground. But we'll see. We'll see what kind of a point he makes. I'm hoping that it's more. I mean, subtitle is How Christian Revolution Remade the World. I'm hoping that it's more history than grabby claims about how you can't even be an atheist, secular, liberal humanist without actually being some sort of smuggled-in hidden Christian, or a book that makes a case that a lot of the qualities that are mentioned in that pub sheet originate with Christianity, when of course they demonstrably do not. Or to say that they need to originate anywhere. Anyway, then we have Dancing with Bees, A Journey Back to Nature. This is just a classic natural history book, in this case centering on bees, but also carrying with it the ethos of a lot of the great natural history books of I am going to, why I went into the woods. I'm going to go to this place, this natural place that I have ignored, no matter how small the patch of ground is. I'm going to go to this place and figure out its mysteries and stop to notice it. I love books like that. Just love them. Then we have The Man Who Played with Fire, the story of Stieg Larsson's nonfiction, his journalistic investigations that were sidelined by the runaway and surprise success of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And what were those investigations? And how close did he come? And is there any leads there that sounds like, according to this book, that things have been happening? Probably more things have been happening than are captured in that pub sheet. I probably need to do some research before I get at this one in the fall. Then Extraordinary Dogs. Aren't they all? And lastly, We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix in this fantastic new cover. This is what the paperback is going to look like. That is just great. So there you go. That is a little Thursday TBR torture for you. I don't know how much more I'll be here today. There might be mail today. I'm assuming there'll be mail today. But one way or another, we'll probably see each other today. So I'll wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.